All right, welcome to this screen recording. In this video, we're going to have a quick look at coming up with original concepts using silhouettes and also integrating actual real-life photographs and looking at coming up with some unique vehicle designs. So we're going to start off in Adobe Photoshop, and I'm going to open up a new document simply by going to File, New, and this might be a slightly different layout to what you have, but it remains the same. Typically, we want something that's going to have a decent resolution to start. So I'm going to go to International Paper, make sure it's set to A4. If you do have the options for Portrait or Landscape, do set it to Landscape. I don't have the option there quite yet, so I'm going to hit OK. And I'm actually going to change mine as well. So I'm going to go Image Rotation, and clockwise or anti-clockwise, doesn't really matter. Now your layout might look slightly different as well. I'm going to go to Window Workspace and hit Reset Essentials. This will bring me up to something that might be a bit close to what you may have as a default. This tends to be the default setup. A good idea is to clean this up a bit. So we're just looking at what we might need. So at the moment, libraries, I'm not going to need. Let's turn that off. What I am going to need is layers, so I'll drag that off. Color is going to come into play at some point. Swatches as well, potentially, but the other ones, for now, I am going to turn off. Now, remember, you can have access to bringing all these back up again in the panel there, but for now, I'm just going to keep these here, put them off to the side so I can easily access them. And these are going to be our three main that we're going to look at here. Again, we can look through these windows and we can bring up, you can see layers, color, and swatches are turned on, and the others are turned off. The other thing I do have at the moment is the rulers. We will be needing those. To bring those up, we go to View and Rulers, or Control R to bring those up. They will come into play. First of all, let's start making sure that we do not start drawing out our background layer. It's a big no-no. What we want to do is start drawing on a blank layer. So I'm going to go ahead and click this little icon here. It says Create New Layer. Make sure we've got a blank layer there. Now, our background there is white. You can change it to this. You can drop in a grey background or whatever's going to work for you. But for now, I'm going to keep this white. And I'm going to start drawing up some concepts. Now, to do this, I'm going to show you a few techniques, but I'm going to grab my brush tool. Shortcut is B. I'll make sure it's on my brush tool, not pencil tool. Pencil tool is great for drawing solid lines, but I do want a bit of character to these. Up here in the top left is our brush selection. Can actually go to this little cog on the right, and we can go to reset brushes to the defaults, and I'm going to hit OK. And it's going to show me what our original brushes are. Now, once again, your setup may be different. It's a new filing system that Adobe has, so your brushes will be in those accordingly, and it takes a little bit of organization. But this is a good start. I'm going to stick with my defaults just so I don't have to dig around too much. I'm going to pick a fairly dark gray color. Now, a lot of people go with pure black for a silhouette. I'm going to go with a dark gray to start with. Again, we can choose it from our swatches or our color picker here, or we can go down to the left in our toolbar and click and select there. So something that's going to be fairly dark. I'm also going to make sure up here in the tool option here that if I go over here on my mouse, I can see this little icon here. It uses pressure for opacity. This one activates the airbrush style build-up effects, and this one here uses pressure for size. So what we want for the silhouettes is actually have a pretty solid object, so I'm not going to have the opacity set to pen pressure. I want the opacity 100, flow 100. Brush shape, if you're using the Wacom, I may want this ticked to get some variation. Now, I also don't want to get one of these big airbrush type brushes for silhouettes. You can see they sort of get a nice sort of blurred effect. For silhouettes, we really want to go with something a bit more solid, similar to that, but not quite that. So I'm actually going to go with, try some of these out. I'm going to add a little bit of style to them. The larger brushes sort of have this kind of effect to them. Now, hopefully that's going to give us a little bit of play when it comes to playing around with our brushes. Do have a play around, see what's going to work. I'm just going to try with the opacity off. It's not quite what I'm after. So, and you know, obviously there's other variations on that. Now, silhouettes, essentially, if you have an idea of what you're chasing, you can start sketching that down. And again, when it comes to concepting, you do want to take into consideration what your vehicle is being used for, who's piloting it, is it an old vehicle, is it brand new, and a huge amount of other factors that can come into play with that. And typically for this, what we want to do is we want to start looking at our references. All good design is based in some form of reality, and if we can, be aware of that when we are creating, it's really going to help us to sell our product. Now, as I'm drawing here, I'm trying to keep it fairly, loose at the moment. I'm not really sure on my design, except I know that it is a vehicle. You'll notice that I am able to do straight lines with this. Now, if you're unfamiliar with this in Photoshop, essentially what I can do for this is hold down the Shift key. So I do have pen pressure turned off, so it's going to do some weird stuff. But if I click into a place, I move my cursor, brush over to somewhere else. I then press Shift, so Shift is now pressed, and then I tap back down again. You'll see it will draw a straight line from one point to the other. I've still got Shift pressed. I go to the next point, and you'll see it will start running these straight lines. Now you'll notice there is a variation in the line width, and this is to do with my pen pressure. If I press down really hard, we're going to get a thicker line. We're going to get that kind of variation going on there. I'm going to Control-Alt-Z, step back. If I turn off this pen pressure option, just using the Wacom, you see it's going to be the same brush size. Now, if I zoom in there really quickly, you may notice there's slight ridges happening along that brush. Now, to get rid of this, this is sort of a speeding up processing tool. If we jump into our toolbox here, this is the little icon here, and the very top one, brush tip shape, it's obviously sometimes something you miss out on because it hasn't got a tick box, the others do. We can tick on that, and what we want to do is we want to make sure that the spacing down the bottom here is turned all the way to 1%. That's going to give us a nice solid brush shape. Okay, and I'm just going to delete this area here. I'm just going to grab my lasso tool, and I'm just going to select around that alpha lasso tool, and let's just step back. Whoop. Control-Z, not too many steps there, and delete. I'm going to hit Control-D to deselect. So I've done one silhouette here. Again, sometimes it's just might not work out. You may wish to duplicate. Now, duplicate, we could drag that down to this icon here to duplicate it. Other option is if we have our selection tool, move tool selected, and hold down the Alt key, you'll notice a little white arrow appears, and if we're on an object, that will allow us to duplicate that. And then I can hit transform, and then maybe I want to rotate it, and there might be something cool that comes out from that. And this is kind of where we can start playing around. I'm going to right click and flip horizontally. Try that again. Some issues with using this recording program, unfortunately. It does some weird and wacky stuff. But there is a kind of interesting shape coming through there that I might be able to duplicate and reuse. So remember, with silhouettes, we are trying to get a nice design happening that we can probably build something out of. So I'm kind of looking at a side profile here. If you're designing something that's more of a top-down thing, you may want to incorporate that as your design, and you may want to mirror it and do all sorts of things. So I'm kind of liking that. I'm going to select those two. I'm going to right-click, and I'm going to go to Merge Layers, turn it into one layer, and I'm going to Control-T, transform, and scale that down. And remember, hold down Shift to constrain your transform. Now, ideally, what we want to do is we want to throw down a bunch of designs. You know, try different brushes and stuff like that. I'm going to show you another couple of quick techniques. Try and keep this tutorial fairly short. I do have a selection of images here, which I thought might come in handy for some vehicles and stuff like that. So, as I said earlier, great design is based in existing design, and form follows function. So let's see if we can find a form that might be good for what we're looking at. I'm going to grab this JU188 aircraft and drag it in to Photoshop, and there it is there. Now you'll notice when I drag this in, excuse me, this is actually a smart object. It doesn't actually have the image yet, it's got this little page image. And that essentially means it can be scaled up and down indefinitely without losing resolution and a whole lot of other things. But what we really want to do is we want to clean this up and be able to get rid of the background, which in the background I can see this big white section here, which is not going to play us well. We just want the shape here. So I'm going to select W for wand tool and make sure it's on the magic wand tool, not the quick selection tool, although quick selection tool can be good. Make sure your tolerance is something decent, probably about 34, 38, thereabouts, 24, 28, that's somewhere around there. And I'm going to click on the white area, have a quick look. It's missed a few areas here. You can see from the marching ants. So I'm just going to go alpha lasso, make sure I'm on the polygonal lasso, does help. And holding down shift, I'm just going to select those areas, close the loop. Oops, control Z if you've gone too far. And once I'm happy with that, signature down the bottom, we're not going to steal this image, we're just going to use its basic silhouette. And it's going to hit backspace or delete, and it's going to come up saying that it's a smart object and not directly editable. So this is what I was talking about earlier. At a certain point, you may need to turn this into a rasterized object. That means it's kicked out of being a smart object, but we can delete. So I'm going to right click in there and go to rasterize layer. And now I can backspace and delete that. Now there's a few little bits there that I've missed. Lasso and delete does help for that. So there I have it. I have a freestanding image that I can use. For now, I actually just want to use this as a silhouette. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump down to this in my layers panel, this little FX button, click on that, and I'm going to go down to color overlay and click on that. It's going to open up a panel. Now default is usually normal and opacity is usually 100%, and that's going to fill it with whatever color you have selected here. Now mine happens to be my previous color, but if it's red or whatever it is, what you may want to do is click in there and then select the color of your stuff, because the silhouette's just based on simple design. And great, once I've got that, I may want to right click on that and rasterize layer style, because I want to keep my files pretty small at the moment. And let's transform that guy down a bit to get him into the screen. There we go. Move my page up a bit. And we've got a nice silhouette there. Let's turn the background on so we can see it a little bit better. And that's pretty good, but it's a little bit sterile at the moment. We could do some fun stuff like grab our eraser, and our eraser works similar to our pen, so we can actually grab some solid shapes there, and we may wish to eat into there if we wanted to. We could use our lasso tool as well, and we could go, let's take some chunks out of this. Etc. etc. I'm going to step back from that, actually kind of need that little bit there. So again, we want to play around with transforming and rotating, so I'm going to duplicate that. Let's transform, and I'm going to right click and then flip vertically. And straight away we can start seeing we actually might be getting some interesting designs if we start mixing this up. This could be quite interesting here. When you enter, I kind of like this area here, but this area is a bit long, so maybe what I can do is grab my lasso tool. This interface is being very finicky at the moment. Double click to close off, and then I might go Control T to transform, and that's just going to transform that little section there. Maybe you want to move that in. You can get something interesting happening there. And deselect. Brush tool, let's add some extra fun, funky bits to it, like so. And that's kind of cool. So we're already starting to get some weird and wonderful things happening. And I really recommend searching for good shapes that you can use to start building up your silhouette. So I've got some interesting ones here from old hovercrafts. There's some interesting designs happening in there. These turbines, you can start breaking that apart. Other interesting ones is aircraft engines, motorbike parts. Motorbike fairings are great. I've actually got some here that are kind of good. Ignore the copyright. And this area here. So my wand tool is not going to work very well here, getting kind of that sort of effect. You may wish to try a quick selection tool, Control D to deselect. And sometimes the quick selection tool might work pretty well, sometimes not so much, but we'll give it a go. And I'm going to select that area. I'm going to hit Control J, and that's going to duplicate in place. And there it is there, that little object there. And let's do a slight transformation on him and grab my wand tool, untick continuous. I'm just going to see if I can get rid of some of these in-between areas here. A little bit finicky, ramp up the tolerance. Not amazing, but we might be able to get something out of that. And once again, effects, color overlay, whoops, wrong one. Color overlay. Again, I haven't done a very good job of cleaning that up, but change the blend mode. I'm just in that one color overlay. There it is there. And again, this is just sort of a quick example. You might be able to get something interesting out of that if we wanted to. Maybe it's going to work better on this one here. Carrying a net or something. So it's a great opportunity to start throwing down some really quick ideas. Again, use a combination of your own tools, other people's images. You can grab apart. Use your lasso tool as well if you want to create some images. If we want to drop a sort of a wing situation happening here, we can do that, and apply that to the correct layer. I kind of like this one in the simplicity form. So again, I'm not going to spend too much time doing this. You should spend a lot more time coming up with more. But let's get on to the next part. All right, let's simplify down. If I'm happy with these, I'm actually going to combine the ones that I want combined. So these two together, Shift Select, right click, merge layers. Great. This one's pretty much its own entity, so that's fine as is. All right, this one am I going to use? I'm just going to turn this original one on, and I'm going to bring him up to size, and stretch him out. How's that look? I kind of like it the way it is. All right, once I'm happy with my design, what we want to do is we want to start defining this, because this is just a silhouette. It needs to be easily recognizable for an image. So let's jump in and have a look at the next